Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm really interested in innovation, and one of the fascinating innovators that I've come across is a waste innovator, and I want to introduce you tonight to Mark Hillis. He's the CEO, and Tim Corcoran, who is the VP Business Development and Marketing for Molok North America Limited. And they have got an innovative waste management firm that adds a touchless design feature to semi-underground containers that contain waste. Gentlemen, welcome to my show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So maybe I could start with you, Mark. Tell me, have you been CEO of Molok for a while, and how did Molok get its start, and how did you join?
There's an interesting question. I kind of had my arm twisted to join. Previously being a municipal employee, I married the owner of Molok North America in 2002.
I like the business so much, I married the owner.
Yeah. I had a choice between my cushy government job and hard slogging it in the private industry, manufacturing semi-underground waste containers. So after a little bit of thinking and kind of having an entrepreneurial spirit anyways, I thought it would be a good thing to do. And the rest is kind of history for the last, 17, 18, 19 years.
Fantastic. And Tim, maybe I could ask you, tell us a little bit about the technology and what makes Molok technology different and better.
Well, I'm gonna start a little bit, I guess, with a bit of history, if I could, Brian. The Molok was started 30 years ago, and at the time, it was the first deviation from the conventional waste container. So we think of carts and we think of dumpsters. Molok was the first semi-underground waste containment system. And with that, we started to innovate that industry, and we haven't stopped for the last 30 years. The most recent innovation is the touchless access control, or as we call it, tactile. And it's been in the works for quite a while. And it was with the thought of nobody wants to touch the lid of a garbage can. And with COVID and everything that's going on, we've got a very robust research and development team, and they got to work on figuring out how we can continue the innovation that Molok started with 30 years ago with something that keeps up with today and allows us to enter into that whole smart city sector and provide something that the users are going to appreciate.
So Mark, what's the benefit of something that's semi-underground?
There's multiple benefits. I think probably first thing to consider is because the waste is kept underground, you get the coolness of the earth. And it's like putting your food in the refrigerator in a sense. You get the coolness of the earth. It slows down decomposition, basically eliminates odors because of it. And then the containers themselves are cylindrical shaped, about 8 feet from top to bottom. And you get a lot of vertical compaction through the way the system works. So our largest container, for example, is 6.5 cubic yards. But when you weigh the waste out in it, it weighs out more like 9 to 10 or even up to 12 cubic yards, depending on how long it's been. So you get a very efficient container in a very small footprint because of the way it's emptied. And crane lifted emptying is kind of the key to the system as opposed to forklifted. So we're reaching with a flexible crane, a knuckle boom articulate crane, mounted on a garbage truck to lift a lifting bag out of the system, position that lifting bag over the packer of the truck, empty the waste or recyclable materials into it, and then that lifting bag is actually closed up, safety trigger put in place and reinstalled into the well, the plastic part that goes in the ground, and it's reused over and over again. So like I said, it's a very efficient system, holds more, smells much better than traditional garbage containers. There's a lot of advantages to it over conventional systems just from those elements in itself. And couple that with tactile and the innovations that we've come up with over the last year and introduced, it just enhances the system all that more. You think about the crane lifted concept compared to conventional surface containers. And with the crane lifted concept, you're really occupying an extremely small footprint, basically the width of the truck with a crane that can reach up to 25 feet away from the truck. So if you start thinking about end users, placement of containers, and flexibility in that placement, making it easier for the end user, then all those things come together and make something that's really unique in North America and continues to be unique as we introduce the new parts of Canada and the US.
Fascinating. Really quite interesting. We're chatting tonight with Mark Hillis. He's the CEO, and Tim Corcoran. He's the VP Business Development and Marketing for Molok North America, who have developed this semi-underground storage waste container and a crane that will pick a reusable bag up out of the container filled with garbage, put the garbage into a truck, and the container goes back, the garbage bag container goes back into the ground. Fascinating. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Mark and Tim in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Saga 960. We're chatting about waste. What a great topic, but it's an interesting topic because we're talking about a way of putting waste into a container that is underground or semi-underground, and as Mark, the CEO of the company, has explained to us that because of that, it compacts and it's less smelly and it's I presume less unsightly, and also then a crane comes along and picks it up and puts it in a truck and away it goes. Tim, where did this technology come from?
It was started 30 years ago in Finland, or probably a little over 30 years ago, by a gentleman named Veikko Sally. He was an engineer by training and an entrepreneur by I guess work or by business. He had hotels and some convention centers, and as the story goes, he was tired of looking out his back window and seeing garbage all over the place, unsightly bins, and he decided there had to be a better way to contain it, and a way that was more designed for the user, not necessarily for the collection vehicle. And he designed what we now have as our semi-underground unit. It's an 8-foot tall, rotationally molded, single piece of high-density plastic, 5 feet of which is in the ground, 3 feet of which is above ground. It stays in there permanently, and it's accessible. The receptacle itself is a very heavy double layer woven polypropylene, so a very heavy canvas type plastic that's reusable, will last up to 10 to 15 years depending on the use. But one of the key elements is that it was designed for the user. So because it only sits 3 feet high, it's accessible, so it meets all of the accessibility guidelines, and it's easy to use. The lid flips to the left, so it doesn't flow to the back. It flips to the left and it closes automatically, and it's an opening large enough for a large green garbage bag. And that
who would be using this? A homeowner or people on the street or a restaurant or what?
Just about. We do a lot of work with multi-residential developers, a lot of work with commercial properties, retirement homes. So just about anywhere where you see the dumpster or carts, and we can find a place that's going to save them space and provide them with a more convenient waste receptacle.
So this replaces the dumpsters that we see outside of all these restaurants and retail.
Absolutely.
Hotels.
Just to kind of give you an example, we did some work with Raleigh, North Carolina. And their downtown core was becoming more vibrant. There was restaurants and businesses, and they didn't have a lot of space. So they had carts, I think upwards of 600 carts in the downtown core. And they did a survey, and the survey said that nobody wanted the carts. They were unsightly, they were smelly, they took up sidewalk space. And so we did some work with them, and we put in 6 of our units, 6 of our larger, we call them M5000, so they're 5,000 liters of containment, found a spot on the street. They were able to eliminate 40 carts from the sidewalks, so open up the pedestrian flow for the sidewalks. They were able to reduce their fuel consumption and service frequency by up to 90%. So from a municipal standpoint, they saved money, they saved time. They were collecting the carts 13 times a week, and they were able to reduce it down to 4. So it's that kind of innovation that Vaco Sally started 30 years ago, and it took up the equivalent of 2 parking spots.
What took up the equivalent to?
Our units, the Molok units, took up the equivalent of 2 parking spots on the street. So
In total or each?
in total? No, in total. So in total, it didn't occupy any space. It freed up sidewalks, reduced their fuel consumption, reduced their time on site,
But
and the
Mark,
restaurants loved it.
Mark, you said that you used to work for a municipality. So the municipality that's collecting the garbage has got to invest in different types of trucks that have got cranes on top of them?
Yeah, in fact, any of the service companies, whether it's the municipalities or the private sector, there is a different type of equipment that's used. And as Tim mentioned a little bit earlier about focusing on the end user. And if you consider the waste industry in Canada and North America, with the waste industry at the top of a pyramid, the people at the bottom, and with municipalities and that type of thing in the center, and seeking the information from the waste experts at the top and pushing that through the municipality down to the end users at the bottom. So we kind of flipped that around. And the advantages of Molok are many, including to the waste industry, but it took a little bit of a paradigm shift in North America to get them to understand that. And when we first came into the North American market in 1999, really parks were about the only industry that was interested in Molok because of some of the equipment that they had on site that was able to open them or empty them internally. And it was shortly after that we actually started our own emptying company in the Waterloo region, Deep Clean Waste Services, which specialized in emptying Molok containers. And as soon as we did that, the industry really took off, because we put that emptying piece into place that helped to demonstrate to the industry that this was a viable option for not just parks, but as you mentioned earlier, restaurants, multi-residential, institutional, and schools. And we have a lot of school boards that are using the system wholesale now. Universities, Wilfrid Laurier's almost completely done their campus in Waterloo region now with Molok. And that was once we were able to prove to the industry that this is a viable solution, then the container system, Molok, just kind of took off across Canada. We have really containers right now from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria on Vancouver Island, and almost everywhere in between. I think we skipped over New Brunswick for some reason, but we'll get to them.
So Tim, you're the guy that is in charge of business development and marketing. So tell us about the challenge of selling. So it sounds like the system is very attractive. Is it the capital expenditure associated with the crane that's the negative, the roadblock to getting more sales?
It's getting the service providers to offer the service. So yes, it's the crane aspect of it. Once they do, and we're finding more and more of the larger service companies are putting cranes in. So as we build out the marketplace, they will come in. But it's a bit of a chicken and egg. The service companies want more of our units, and the customers want more choice. And so fortunately, there's a number of architects and developers that see the advantages in it, and are working with us to move it forward, and the service companies are jumping on board.
But a one-off developer can't go for it, because you've got to have a municipality or service provider that is obviously got the equipment to do the collection.
Well, there's service pretty much across Canada. Mm-hmm. There's not very many spots. Now, having said that, I'm sure someone's going to say, yeah, but it's not here. But there's not very many locations where there isn't service around a metropolitan area. If you go into certain parts of, Alberta, Saskatchewan, northern BC, you may not be able to find service, but in most of the metropolitan areas, larger cities, you're going to have service.
I got to tell you, I've been out at two patios. I know we've just reopened our patios recently in Ontario. I've been out at two patios, excuse me. And in one, it was a beautiful patio, gorgeous restaurant, but like 10 feet away were three big garbage bins. And they were messy and they were smelly and they were disgusting to look at. And I'm sure there was a animal of some sort that was wandering around amongst it. And the other one, there wasn't big bins. There were those, wheelie things. What do you call those?
Carts.
Carts. And they were overflowing probably by 2 feet of extra stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's where if we can get everybody on the same page, we could eliminate a lot of that.
Is there an issue, Mark, with being underground? I think that, every gas station had underground storage units that they came to regret because of leakage. Is there a problem with being underground? Is there a risk from an environmental standpoint?
Yeah, none whatsoever. One thing about Molok, and because of the engineering that went into it, it's very simple in its function, but very highly engineered. And there really isn't any part of it that wasn't seriously thought about through the engineering and design process, including tactile. And so, one of the things that came about through that engineering and R&D of the initial product was, what do we need to have? Because we're putting a container into the ground. And so first of all, it needed to be a rotationally molded container, which means that it's seamless with no perforations, no welds, nothing along that side. It's like a giant plastic cup in the way that it's manufactured. And secondly, it's high density polyethylene. So it has a lot of integrity when it's made, so that it can go into the ground without any danger of it cracking or anything along that line. We don't use any recycled material other than from our own rotation molding process when we manufacture it, so we don't run a risk of having a contaminant in the plastic, some shred of metal or something like that can rust and perforate. So there's a ton of integrity that goes into it. And because of that, and because we were able to demonstrate how well engineered and put together it is, it really hasn't been an issue anywhere where we've installed them in Canada. Even in high water tables, we just use a different anchoring system that makes sure the container is very stable and secure. And we have containers that are more than 20 years old now, that have been in constant use for 20 years with minimal repairs or maintenance or replacement parts put on them. There's that much integrity built into the system. Does
high density polyethylene degrade over time when it's submerged in the soil?
If we ever find that out, we'll let you know. But no, it doesn't. It's meant to last for a long, long time. The plastic has UV stabilizers put into it for the portion that's above ground where the sun rays can hit it, and the integrity of it's just not going to break down probably in any of our lifetimes. I know in Europe, in Finland in particular, where the containers are now 30 years old, there are still 30-year-old containers that have just been refurbished with the decorative framing that goes around the above ground portion of it, just to give them a little bit of a perky facelift. And the lifting bags inside them have a ton of integrity as well. For instance, with a multi-res, we're probably looking at 15 years lifespan on one of those lifting bags, and then it's replaced and it's good for another 15.
What's inside of the polyethylene bag? Dirt? And how do you dig the hole?
No, basically the big cup portion, the well, we call it, the polyethylene portion is the part that goes into the ground, and then the lifting bag goes inside the well. So it's completely contained. Any potential leachate or anything that might come out of the waste material that's in the bag is, if there is any at all, and there isn't, it's very well contained within the well itself.
And there's nothing outside of the well. There's no concrete or something outside of the well. It goes straight into the dirt.
Straight into the dirt. There is a layer of 30 centimeter thick high pressure concrete that's laid around the base of the container to anchor it into place during the installation. But apart from that, it's really very stable.
How do you dig the hole?
Just with a backhoe or an excavator of some sort.
And then pack the dirt back around it.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of the containers that we've built in the last 20 years, 22 years, have gone into new constructions. And Tim alluded a little bit earlier about architects, and an architect, a good architect, any architect recognizes the value that the space-saving value that Molok brings. So they like to design them into new construction. And so in a new construction, it's just another part of the construction process when the building is built. Probably in the last 5 years, we've seen an ever increasing amount of, I guess, proportion of our annual manufacturing that's going into retrofitted locations, whether they be quick serve restaurants, hotels, schools, multi-residential strip plazas, things like that. So that's increasing, and that's a little bit of a different story because it has to be installed after the fact. But if like you said, at the restaurants you were at, where the two big dumpsters were smelling and creating all those issues, probably the other thing that they were doing was taking up parking space, sort of valuable parking space.
Or patio space.
Yep. And so when we can go into a retrofit situation and take two dumpsters away, we're creating better traffic flow. We're creating more landscape opportunities. We're creating better use of space overall, and we're eliminating the unsightliness of it, and we're eliminating the odors of the system too. So, one of our sayings is we make garbage look good.
We make garbage look good.
Why not, eh?
Great line. Whereabouts are you guys located? You're a Canadian company?
Yeah, we're a Canadian company. We've spent the better part of our 22 years in Mount Forest, Ontario, Canada, which is about,
where's that?
Midway between Guelph, the city of Guelph, and the city of Owen Sound. Midwestern Ontario, Mennonite country. It's a great place to live. That's where I am right now. It's actually a really cool place. We've got great inbound, outbound supply chain, a great labor force here, people with really great work ethics. And that's where we've set down roots.
Everything's manufactured there.
Yep.
Excellent. And what would one of these things go for?
Tim, you're the sales guy.
Okay. So a standard unit, our M5000, which is our largest, would run you about $4,500.
And what would a dumpster cost?
Well, the dumpster will likely be the fee or charge will be will be included in the service, the collection fee. It won't cost you that much. Where you're going to see the savings with ours is space, and the ability to open up more areas, which I guess is space. But the key, and as Mark mentioned to it, is the parking. And so one of the things that we always will talk to people about is what's the value of a parking space? And if you think about, or I guess in COVID times, it could be what's the value of a patio space? Mm-hmm. You could expand the patio and add 4 more tables by moving that waste. What's the value of that to somebody? Is it $100 a day? So 4 tables equates to $100 a day. It doesn't take long before you've more than made up for the additional cost of having something in there that you can actually be proud of, but also
a parking spot for a condo in Toronto goes for $100,000.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I know. So, and even if it's a rental, if it's $200 a month, it doesn't take long before that adds up. And so we'll one of the things that we'll do is we'll go in and talk to that restaurateur, that condo owner, or the developer, and say to them, what is that value? Because if you're giving that up for waste, then not only are you not making money from it, but it's costing you money. So if we can move it somewhere, and with having the advantage of the crane, you have complete flexibility as to where you move it. So you can get it out of the parking, you can put it in an island,
so I was
in a corner.
Recently involved in the design of a building And one of the big complications was that they had to have a fairly large service area that the waste trucks had to be able to come in high enough that the forklift could pick up the dumpster and dump it, and big enough so that you could do a 3 or whatever point turn to get back out. So if you've got a constrained space to get into the back of a building, how would you solve that with your system?
Well, if we'd have to, I could try to give you a couple of examples. You still need the height. So you still need the clearance for the crane. You need about 18 feet. 19 is ideal, but 18 feet will do. And we actually had that tested out at Pearson because we have some units in the airport and we didn't want to mess with the federal airline regulations, airspace regulations. But when you're looking at a space, the truck can pull up beside the unit. So instead of having that straight up run on that you require for the forks, the truck can pull up beside. Okay, so you're saving all of that space. And then think about the ability for a crane that can, say, do 260 degrees around the truck and reach 25 feet. So if you start to envision what does the space look like, can we put it off on the corner that's convenient for the users? And as long as the crane can fit, then there's usually an opportunity to place it somewhere and free up some space or reduce the traffic and all the backing and forthing and the I guess some of the safety issues that go along with that.
This makes sense for dumpsters. What about just for the typical garbage can on the street that is so unsightly and often overflowing?
Well, we have smaller ones that we call cityscapes, which are actually designed, and we have some in the Kitchener-Waterloo area that are designed for pedestrian traffic. They're slightly different in shape. They only go 3 feet in the ground. They're open on both sides as opposed to having a lid, and they are designed for pedestrian use, and they will hold significantly more waste. Again, keeping it cooler. And allowing you to reduce the collection frequency that you see walking down the streets of City of Toronto.
Mark, are you public or private company?
We are a private company.
So I can't buy a stock?
Not yet.
And if people want to check you out, Tim, how do they do that?
Well, they can go to our website, which is www.molokna.com.
Awesome.
Or they can give us a call if they like.
What, other than what we've been talking about today, Mark, what's the future of waste? Is it burning it? Is it converting it into methane? Is it trucking it to landfill? What's the future of your business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When you think about it, many of the Scandinavian countries where Molok originated from have been incinerating and actually creating waste to power facilities throughout the region. So waste gets put into a train or a truck and goes to a plant that burns it and converts it to energy. The technology is definitely around to do that incineration in a very clean, non-polluting sort of way and create energy out of it. But you mentioned biogas as well, and there's definitely a need to pull organic material out of the waste stream in a much bigger way than we're doing in Canada right now. And I think there are some hotspots in Canada that are doing an excellent job. And I think about some of the regulations that the province of Nova Scotia has put into place more than a decade ago to do that. That are pulling that and either composting or better yet, creating biogas, burning the biogas off and running generators and creating electricity and low-grade nitrogen fertilizer coming out of that that go back into agriculture. But probably one of the most important things that we have to think about moving forward is packaging. The consumer's responsibility, but also the producer's responsibility.
Creating less waste.
creating less waste and just doing a better job at the things that we do that create waste in the first place that we have to dispose of. We're pretty tuned into what's going on in Ontario in the waste industry, and from a municipal perspective, and even from a private sector perspective, the amount of facility that's available to dispose of waste from a landfill perspective is becoming less and less all the time. It's finite, and but you know, as human beings, we're really good at starting to drive innovation when we get our backs up against a wall. So you know, COVID and tactile again are one thing. I was in I think it was Amsterdam Airport a little more than a year ago, and they had created touchless access to the garbage containers in the airport. At Schiphol Airport. And so I brought that back and sat around our strategic management team table and basically said, hey, we got to come up with something that does this with our Molok containers. COVID's here. Garbage is not great to start with. When you have a multiple a lid that multiple people are using, and specifically enhance that with COVID, the need for driving that innovation became greater and greater. We've got an amazing R&D team, and we make full use of it all the time. We're constantly innovating and improving the product. So tactile was a natural progression out of that visit that was really born when I was heading home from Europe when COVID just started last year.
What are the benefits of traveling and seeing how other people do it?
Yeah.
Tim, remind us of the website.
It's www.molokna.com.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight and telling us about making garbage. What is it? Beautiful?
We make garbage look good.
We make garbage look good. And the underground or semi-underground storage of garbage through your system at Molok, North America. Our guests again, Mark Hillis, the CEO, and Tim Corcoran, the VP Business Development and Marketing. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.